Hey, so we are back again with the Forensic Happy Hour. Extremely excited. I think it's going to be, could get nutty, don't know, because we both make these things up when we're talking. So, although it's going to be a great time with Brian, I know for sure. He's been doing it a long time, and I think it is going to be very informative. So make sure, because we always give some tidbits away at the end. So unfortunately, you have to listen. Please don't fast forward. And if you're watching this, obviously live, you're going to have a good time. Cool. So we are here, and I am here first with cheers to Brian Moran. Thank you so much for being on here.
Cheers.
And so the first thing really is, hey, tell everyone really, I mean, who is Brian?
Well, that's a really, really good question. Who is Brian? Well, I wish I had like a catchy song like Fresh Prince or something, but I really
Right.
don't. I grew up in the middle of Pennsylvania, kind of in the middle of nowhere amongst coal mountains, and moved to Indiana when I was a teenager, and then accidentally got joined the Air Force. I got in the wrong line returning a video, and somehow accidentally joined the Air Force for 13 years. Did that for a while, and decided that I was introduced to this career field during my, well, technically my first Iraq deployment, but more realistically my second Iraq deployment, doing forensics in support of detainee operations, and got back to the States. Happened to get with a group who was doing this, and have been doing it pretty much ever since. So, I've been really fortunate that I've worked on some super, super awesome sensitive stuff in support of operations compared to your typical, now, unfortunately, ransomware attack that makes things like my Garmin completely useless for a while.
Right,
Yep.
right. Yeah. So in that, if we go back to kind of the evolution, the forensic side of that, and especially on kind of the deployment, and so primarily, I mean, when we start talking about that forensic side of it, I mean, are you going now and assisting when they come in? Are you training it? What exactly as part of that deployment? I mean, what was
Yep.
the job? What did it entail for you?
So like a roundabout way of how I got my first start in the true forensics field was getting ready to fly over to Iraq from Norfolk, which is a naval air station where I was in the Air Force. So like already that just started off really odd, but was playing Tiger Woods golf on my laptop with an Xbox 360 controller, and
Right.
our OIC, the officer in charge, saw that and thought it was really cool. And we get over to Iraq and country, and like, oh, we have this thing called computer forensics that has to be done. It's like, well, Brian knows all about computers. So literally I got my start by playing a video game, which is like one of the like ultimate career achievements, like achievement unlocked. I actually started because I played a video game. And
I love it.
originally it was kind of just like, stuff would come in and be like, some phones, some computers, some hard drives. And it's like, well, like I think like pictures might be important. So let's just like get pictures off this stuff. And
Right.
fortunately, at the time, Mantech signed a contract to bring a bunch of civilian contractors in to kind of like
Right.
spread them out over the country and then work on doing essentially, forensics in support of just the overall operation. So I happen to
Right.
work with two guys, and they have forgotten more than I will ever know. Like it was absolutely fantastic, but I just latched onto them and learned everything that I could, and then just developed like, hey, I have an actual like niche for doing this, and just kept on doing it, and it's great.
So you bring up a fantastic point because honestly, I think that some of the things today, if you look on the military side of it, is like, hey, yeah, there's this dude. I mean, he's so good at playing, this game. I think that we probably, I mean, let's bring him in because I think that he can operate a drone,
Yep.
right? Or be able to do that. And honestly, I do, I don't have any inside information, but I can pretty much tell you that's probably what's occurring, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like even the evolution of video games too. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, every video game is kind of like a puzzle in some sort, and that parallels so well to what we do. Regardless of if you focus on mobile stuff or
Right.
dead box forensics or incident response or
Right.
anything like getting small little pieces and putting stuff together. Like that's what we
Right.
do every day.
Right. Right. So let's talk about that. I mean, because on the forensic side of it, I think that it has changed obviously a bit. I would like to say a lot, for the better. And you're talking about, hey, yeah. So I think pictures might be good. Maybe this message, I'm not quite sure. Which is completely exactly how it was done, right?
Yep.
Especially when you start talking about mobile phones. You're like, I think this is cool. Maybe they think it's cool. And so if we look at the progression of really right now. I think that there is okay. I understand here's the mission and here's these types of things that we need because quite honestly, as much data that there is now in these, I think that they have to go to, hey, I just need pictures
Yep.
or I just need this. I mean, is that something that you're seeing as well, just because of the data sets?
I think it really depends on what you're so within the overwhelming like niche of digital forensics, like there's even subsets of that, so it depends on like what your actual
True.
job is, because
True.
some places they care about pictures and videos and messages, and that's pretty much it, whereas other places they don't care about that. You're doing like incident response for a Fortune 500 company or something. Nobody cares about mobile device stuff really. They care about the person in HR who clicks on phishing links like every day, and her password unfortunately is her cat's name, which is Mittens, which is on Facebook. Like,
Right.
so
Right.
it just really
Right. Right.
depends.
Yeah, I think probably the best keyword list that you can get from people are their social
Oh,
media. You just might as well
absolutely.
just throw it in as a dictionary, and I mean, just you can live it
Yep.
probably pretty much beyond anybody's, right? So if we go back to kind of on the, I guess on the forensic side of that. So in country, obviously, it's way different than say I have time. You know what? I'm going to sit down, have myself a drink, a little, and is 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 the time element, I guess better on say if you talk to law enforcement military side, the time elements maybe on the private side, right? Is there an opportunity for to look for that needle in the haystack?
Well, I think one thing that translates really, really well is not necessarily the time aspect, but like how you manage that and how comfortable you are deciding like what is important, what is not important, and kind of elevating like this is something that I think is really important. I'm going to look at this first and then kind of go from there. Because that's one of the things that we had to deal with every night was, I mean, there'd be literally like boxes of hard drives show up, and like how do you pick which one you do first? It
Right.
to go slightly graphic for a second, the ones with blood on them are probably important. So those are pretty much
Right.
the ones that we
Exactly.
start with.
Exactly. Right. Right.
Yep.
Exactly. And I mean, looking at that. So I guess a recommendation. What's a recommendation that you would give to say? I mean, even someone who's been doing it a while, and that can relate to someone who's just getting into it, based upon the triage side of it, right? Or based upon how do I know what to look for? What's some advice that you can give to someone?
Whatever, once you define a process of what it is that you need to get, like what is important to you or your company or whatever your job is, like find a way to automate that as quickly as possible, because then you can let the computer do the work while you actually focus on things that require more intensive analysis. Like
Right.
it doesn't matter what language, it doesn't matter, if it's a scripted language, it doesn't matter if you write a program to do it. Like it doesn't, you just have to find a way to automate the easy things, and so that way you can spend the time looking at the hard things.
Yeah, and so the automation, I mean, it's really I've seen really some fantastic automated tools. Obviously, Eric, and now you got Alex, and I mean, there's some really cool things out there that you can do that can help the process. So, do you think obviously the triage, and I say triage aspect has gotten better?
Uh, I I don't know that it's overall it's gotten better, but I think it's gotten better because there have been more public contributions to people doing things
Right.
that, typically like you would find like one shop or one person did something, and then you go somewhere else and they have the same thing but it was written by a different person, so it's done differently, but at the end of the day it's the
Right.
same result. So the one of
Right.
the things that I love is just the open source community in general, is just the collaboration and sharing that goes on now, because you know you have an iOS device because of with Sarah's Apollo stuff and Alexa's iLeap and all that. Like, I mean, you can get answers in literally minutes from an iOS device, whereas the old style of connecting to ATT
Yeah.
Wi-Fi and
Exactly.
SSHing using
Right.
Alpine, like
Right. Right.
those days are
Right.
long gone.
Right, right, right.
Yep.
Exactly. So, So I guess talking about that really too, as a community, do you think? Well, I know, especially here, I know, Alexa, I know they've been doing this and really bringing this to the forefront. There's a lot of people in the community. And I 100% agree with you that I think that those types of those tools that are really, I mean, if you talk about grassroots, right? And so do you think that obviously the last 5 months that we've been in this Thunderdome or whatever it's called, right? That is actually the silver lining. I mean, there's a benefit on the forensic side of it by allowing people maybe to sit, if there is a silver lining of it, that allows people to, one, share community-wide because people need to have that, and just time, that people might have. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do think it's weird. It's like a catch-22. So initially, I
Exactly.
thought that we were going to have all the time in the world to do all the things, and it
True.
it turns out that is not the case at all. Like I am
Right.
probably busier right now than I have been, with the
Right.
exception of the Iraq deployment. Like
Right.
it's ridiculously crazy, and you learn to make time and budget for certain things. Like there was stuff that I absolutely wish I could do that unfortunately I can't do because I just don't have the time. But I do think just from like people out like reaching out, via primarily on Twitter, and just asking questions about stuff. And I always try to respond to anybody who has a question with it. Like I always, because we've all been incredibly lucky to get to where we were. So like we all very
Right.
much have a mentoring and try to bring people in and everything like that. But it's just like I get to see the time that they get to devote to things, and part of me gets jealous because I was like, "Gosh, I
Exactly.
wish I had the time to do that." But
Yeah.
but on the other hand, if somebody else does that, that means that I don't have to, so I can focus on something else. So I mean, it
Right.
all works out in
Right.
the end.
Yeah, I know exactly. And you know what? I think that you're exactly right. Is that everyone's like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything. But honestly, it's like I'm going, man, when's this day going to get
Yep.
over? Because it's just is this in the week? I'm like, what day is
Yep.
it? Because it's Friday again. I mean, it has been, and so let's go to that point. Is that if you think about law enforcement and you think about whatever on the forensic side of it, it's I think I think that one, people have more time. Bad guys. People have more time that are, say, the victims that you might have of these, if we're talking the law enforcement side of it. But then coupled with the corporate side of it, that people have more time to be the missing or the person behind the keyboard that is like, I don't know, but I'm just going to do this.
Yep.
And no one's telling me. There's no IT, no one's going to come to my house and do my IT stuff. So whatever, I'm just going to figure it out. So honestly, I think that for years, people will be playing catch up on the forensic side of it and for the cases. And I think that where the triage tools and a lot of those other items to get through and wade through all of this are going to be tremendously useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And like like to your point of just like the triaging portion of it is s- we take for granted things like drive space, and like you don't really realize how big it is until you're like, oh well, like let's say like 1 kilobyte's a piece of paper. Like how much is 2 terabytes? It's like that's a
Right,
stack of paper
exactly.
127 miles high. Like that's a lot of
Right,
storage. And
right,
who
exactly.
some of us use that, but for the most part we don't. So you have
Yeah,
you have your corporate laptop with like 8 terabytes of storage in it, and you use maybe 40 gigs. Like you have to obviously triage something like that, because you're
right.
not going to sit there and make an 8 terabyte image and be like, like I mean, it would be great in
Yeah,
the perfect world, you could bill for that, but
exactly.
that's
Right,
always the case.
exactly. Exactly. I know. That's what you look at. You're like, hey, so, as much storage. Yeah,
Yep.
okay, you got it now. Which is crazy to me too that you look at it that an entry level laptop that you can buy at dirt cheap has like um, it's a small 128 SSD drive, and then like a 5 terabyte 5 terabyte couple of those that are going to be on there. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. It's just to me, and so that comes down to two is to the point of not necessarily the triage, yeah, but I mean all of this data, all this information that whether you have from the cloud, whether you have it from your phone, whether you have it from the network side of it, and I mean how do you manage that?
It's tough. It really is. So like a prime example is just for giggles. A couple of weeks ago, I did Google Takeout on myself just to see how much data I had, and I'm not even going to say how much it was, but I was very
Exactly.
disheartened by how much data I have up on Google. Like,
Exactly.
oh my goodness.
Exactly.
And
Oh yeah.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that's just one aspect of like all of the
Yeah.
data that phones, because the phones are somewhat included
Yeah.
but not really included, and then the
Yeah.
storage on the actual computers and everything, and the network storage.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
No.
gosh,
Exactly.
like I don't,
Exactly.
yeah,
I'm even in the business, and I look at my phone, and I'm just like, how can I get rid of this? I mean, can I put something through it? Because you wind up just walking around, driving around, doing whatever. I'm not even using any type of mapping software, not doing any of that other stuff. And then you're lining up, hey, yeah, you know what? Let me just take a look at that because someone asked a question about it, so I'll just look at my other stuff, and you're just like going, what the? I mean, you're just looking at going, seriously? I mean, so again, to to that end, I mean, how with everyone and all of the either the ISPs or now you have all these telco companies and all those. How much data do you think that they've gathered, proportional to before all of this stuff? I mean, it's crazy.
yeah, yeah. I,
It's
I
it,
can't
it, it's
even
amazing.
I can't even begin to fathom, because we always kind of joke about it, like the big data problem, but it's not necessarily a problem because companies have figured out ways to process it. But from
Right.
our standpoint, from the forensic investigation standpoint, like, there's a lot of stuff out there that we're never even going to see that's being
Yeah.
sold unless we buy it from one of these marketing companies.
Exactly.
That's the only way to get it.
Exactly. Exactly. You're like, what? And so it's funny because, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to talk to you about with the DFIR fit stuff, but, you go in now and, you get the free app that you're using to run, and you're like, you get these forced ads, and you're like going, seriously?
Yep.
Dude, I just looked that up yesterday,
Yep.
or something, and I'm like going, this is to me is that, and then obviously they're not keeping that data. They're making a ton of money on that data, by selling it off to those because there's like terms and conditions. Love them.
Yep.
Boom, next to it, don't even read them.
Yep.
After that says, hey, we're going to make sure we give this to all of our third-party supporters and all of our sponsors. That type of stuff.
Yep.
So it's one of those crazy, crazy issues. But hey, tell me, it's with the whole with the exercise, with the DFR fit, all of that cool stuff that you have. I mean, talk to people about that. I think that's important for people to understand.
Yeah, well, so that started, I guess, 2 maybe 3 years ago in Austin with Stacy, forensics woman on Twitter, just decided that she was going to create a hashtag called D for Fit, just to like kind of have some motivation and kind of accountability of like, let's try to be a little bit more active in our days, because I mean,
Right.
again, we all work with computers.
Don't do forensics and
Yeah.
sit at the bar and drink beer.
That's good every once in a while.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's really just about, just like trying to provide motivation and keep people being active, because especially now, like, work is really kind of like from when you wake up until when you go to bed. There's no
Right.
longer a specific, like, it's one thing to like, oh well, I'm going to treat my commute to my office like as down the
Exactly.
bedroom, and oh, there was an accident
Exactly.
because two pugs are barking at each other, like, oh, I had
Yeah.
to take a
Yeah.
detour, like, it's
My slipper fell
yeah.
off. I gotta get going.
Yeah, it's like, and at some point, I guess we have the drones up with the traffic camera, or the traffic
Exactly.
choppers, and like, oh, it's
Right.
just,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Right.
but it's just,
Yeah.
just trying to get people to just be a little bit more active, and that's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Like, nobody's trying to like win the Olympics or anything like that. It's just,
Right.
yeah, just
Right.
being a little doing a little bit more, and that's it.
No, it's good. I mean, quite honestly, there have been some transformations, that I have seen, especially you look at, some of the people that I saw, before, Rob Lee,
Yep.
right? I mean, really, really taking and people in the community, it's again, it's one of those things is because, you kind of get lumped into, okay, yeah, this is what you guys do and whatever, whatever. But it takes it and it brings in again kind of like the human aspect of it. It's so funny. You know what? My kids are all out of in college and all out of college and all that other great stuff. But I remember, my daughter, I think my oldest one, she was winds up going to the grocery store, and she runs into her teacher, and she's like, "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at school? What do you do? You actually eat?" Those types of things, right? And so I equate that to looking at people that are in the community that do all this stuff, this awesome stuff, that put things together, and kind of put it on like, dude, we're just people,
Yep.
and these are just the things that you do. And so again, I think that the kind of the fit and seeing the transformation and people doing community that way, I think it's been tremendous.
Yeah, and it's also ironic in a sense because typically you don't associate with people who sit behind a computer day with really fitness at all. And the actual flip side is true. Like some of the people in the overall fitness community, like in the tech community, like I mean, like world champion powerlifters, like, and here's me,
Exactly.
like I do curls on my squat rack downstairs.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Hey, yeah. I kind of did some reverse curls,
Yeah.
with the bar. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it has been. It's been pretty cool to follow. Especially looking at that, and it has, as it has progressed, it's been some cool stuff. So talk to me too, about really what is your favorite. And I kind of bring all this in and trying to go. So you always have your favorite investigation, or if you can think about it. But what can you share with people? Is that something, the investigation, whether it be a cyber side of it, whether it be some a digital forensic side of it? What's something that you can tell people, an artifact or something that you're always going to go to? What is something that you think is important for an investigator?
Well, I don't necessarily know that it's an artifact as much as it's something that I try to build on every case. And it's ironic because it doesn't matter if it's like a case involving a personal individual, like even like a crime of some sort. It doesn't matter if it's an IR. Like one of the very first things I always try to do is essentially establish the pattern because we're all human beings and we all tend to fall into patterns. So it's a pattern of
True.
when did the activity happen? What are the hours specifically that we're looking for? Because right off the bat, and going all the way back to the triage thing, is right off the bat, if you can just focus on a specific time frame, say between like 8 and 2 every day, like you have already narrowed the data that you need to look at down considerably because you no longer have to look at the stuff that happens at night or whatever that is. So like I would say probably building up a pattern of kind of the timeline of interest is pretty much the first thing that I always try to do. And again, it's weird because the data sources are from different, be it on Windows system like event logs,
Yeah.
be it on a mobile device, the actual like activity trackers and stuff like that. Like,
Right.
just try to figure out what time frames are of interest and then kind of spider off from there.
Yeah, I think that's important, because again, like you said, I mean, we're all creatures of habit, really, right? You wake up in the morning, you check your phone, and kind of how you start the day. But so with the timeline, I think timeline is extremely important on a couple of things, right? So you go and you lay out really, okay, these are the events. But then you can kind of target, right? You can kind of target those things of if a certain event happened at this time, right? Looking, hey, what do you have going on, as part of the timeline? So if you look at someone's timeline, what would you say? What's better for, I don't want to say prediction, but you can predicting or looking at events of a person, whatever type of 0 or 1, if it comes from a computer, it comes from network, comes from a mobile device, what would you say the device that you would go in and rely on more, to establish someone's location, their, I don't want to say motive, but I mean, what would you take over anything else?
Ah, boy, that's a good one. I would,
I try to stump
yeah, I
everyone.
I would I would say usually I would say phone, but that's not the case now with the current world that we live in. It's more of whatever you use to check the internet the most. If that's your tablet, if
Exactly.
that's your
That's
phone.
right.
For me, honestly, it's my Chromebook. Like
Right.
I have
Right.
my Chromebook 24/7. Like the only time I plug
Right.
that thing in is to let it charge. That's it. Like
Right.
and it's just I use that and I've always had a Chromebook, but I found myself doing more with the Chromebook than even like a computer doing forensic analysis work on. Like I do that, and I let the computer run, and then I'm on the Chromebook doing all sorts of other things. Like,
Yeah.
and I,
Yeah.
and it's something that with the stay at home thing and everything, like I have gravitated to that more. But I
Yeah.
have a tablet, I have the phone, I have all of that, but for whatever reason the Chromebook is my device
Yeah,
now.
you know what? Exactly. I think you might be on. I mean, you're onto something. I mean, we'll start this big rumor, but I'm telling you what, that's huge. Just to think about that, is that because if you are at home, you know what? If you're at work, completely different animal, right? I sit at my desk. I have this that I
Yep,
utilize. If I'm not at my desk, I'm going to lunch or whatever. I have my phone with me, right? I don't want to go and carry around a Chromebook. I don't want to carry around a tablet and do my stuff. But hey, I'm at home,
yep,
so I'm going to shuffle into the kitchen. I'm going to shuffle in here because I can see it better.
yep,
We get old. You
yep,
can't see on the phone all the time, so you want to use something bigger. I mean, it makes complete sense
yep.
to do that. So that is it. I mean, that's probably the best tip I've ever given. So yeah. So everyone's going to be throwing all their Chromebooks out now and using readers on their phones so that they can't go and they can look at
Well,
all
that's
that
fine
crazy stuff.
because we have ways to parse that out. We don't have much for Chromebooks.
Exactly. Exactly. I know. You're thinking about it, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, exact Chromebook. Huh.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So no, that's really, really good. And if you did not know, and this is just a shameless plug for me, but in you're actually mentioned in like I can't remember what chapter it was in one of my books.
I did not
Actually
know that.
twice in both. No, 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 only in the second edition. Yeah, so I gave you props for with some Alexa stuff. So I had been doing some Alexa research, but I based it primarily on a lot, the papers and some of the papers that you had put together. So I want to say thank you for
Yeah, that,
doing all that cool stuff.
that's
Yeah, no,
fantastic.
it is. I
Yeah,
threw the props out to all that great stuff, and you're like, hey, yeah, you really have to buy your book. No, you don't have to.
yeah.
I'll send you one.
That was,
So
gosh, that was probably one of the best years just from a research perspective because I had the time to fully devote to literally making an entire year of data. So like we had start to finish of, and it wasn't the typical like in a college lab where, the kids get together for like 2 weeks and use it. Like that's cool.
right,
Like let's actually use it and make it part of our
right.
lives and then go back and see like, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff here.
Right? Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, no, it's fantastic and it's great because, as I was going through and I was kind of putting all that stuff together, and then I started developing, a couple talks on with Alexa because it's hilarious. So I had a couple of them in the house, and this is again a sidebar story because it's hilarious. I use it all the time. So my youngest, who's now 20, but she winds up. I think we're out of town or whatever. She plugged in the Alexa. She had some friends over. She's doing all the great stuff. And I get back and I'm like, cool. Hey, I got to get ready for presentation, whatever. So, I wind up going in and yanking all this stuff from the Amazon account and everything else, man. And I'm telling you what, because, they record the utterances that they think you might have
Yep.
said, right? Oh my gosh. She throws the biggest F bomb out and she is screaming around the house, talking about something upstairs, there's door slammed. She's F bomb. And I'm like, dude, I'm so using that in every one of my
Yep.
presentations. I'm going to play that. It is hilarious. So, no, artifacts are fantastic
Yep.
if you want to do that. But I want to thank you. That was awesome. That was some really great stuff. So, one of the things, too, if you start talking about, we kind of go in, we have the different conferences, we go speak at different conferences. A lot of them have gone obviously online and virtual. So give me your opinion. Give me your opinion on them, and then I'll tell you mine.
So on conferences in general now?
Yeah, on virtual.
Okay,
Since it's gone virtual.
so one of the things that I think is interesting is there are some the forensic conferences have so far all been great. I've had the I guess unfortunate experience of being in some non-forensic conferences that have been just complete dumpster fires. So the forensic conferences have like what they've done with like actually like bringing the speakers in and then making the speakers available for chat has been really interesting to see kind of the initial feedback like typically after a talk you have a group of people who get up and will patiently wait for them to finish through the line and then some of them get impatient and leave also probably because it's about
Right.
lunchtime whereas online
Right.
like you just type your question in and then when they get a chance to get back to you like it's fantastic it's just
Right.
it's really cool to see the engagement and also I think I am not by any means an introverted person, but there are many people in our field who are. So
Right.
suddenly they have that confidence that they can actually type
Yeah.
their question in and actually get answers and get the feedback going,
Exactly.
which you would never get at a live conference because they would just be sitting in the back and just like, maybe somebody
Right.
will notice me. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. 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 And honestly, I think that is spot on because yeah, I guess there's a plus and a minus, right? So it's if you say, or your catch 22 on this is because I think that on the forensic side of it and the technical side of it, it's gone so well because of just that, right? We're talking that a standard conference that you might have of NCCC, or if you take the summit that's typically in Austin. I mean, that 18,000 people
Yep.
that wind up coming onto those. But then it's not only just those who are attending the conference, but it comes down to now the engagement. I think that people are more engaged because, just like you said, they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll email them, or maybe I'll text them, or maybe I won't do anything because I don't want to sound stupid.
Yep.
Hey, you're behind a keyboard, man. People say stupid stuff all the time, right? So, I mean, they're going to do that right away. I mean, it's complete the anonymity of it. But again, I think that's a positive
Yep.
because, I think that the engagement has completely gone up. But so I say the catch-22 side of it is because, quite honestly, I don't know if people are going to be in person.
Well, so one of my hopes is that I hope that there is an online element to in-person conferences, so we can get exactly those people who don't want to ask the questions in public, and they have a forum to do that. Because that's always been kind of the drawback I've always seen from pretty much every conference is somebody wants to ask a question, but there's they're too shy to do it,
Yeah.
or don't want to, for whatever reason, have imposter syndrome, or whatever the reason is, just
Right.
like, I don't want to ask this question, but they have a question, and it's a fantastic question. It's like, just ask the question. But now they have an outlet to
Exactly.
actually potentially do that. So like,
Right.
I would love to see, all the conferences in the future have some sort of, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an online streaming element, but just an element of make, the speaker available on, your Slack or whatever it is
Yeah, and
per
you know
event.
what? I think they could probably do that too live,
Yep.
right? So, I mean, if it's a chat channel that you have and to moderate that, there's still people in the back of the room are like, boom, 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 right?
Yep.
They're just going and throwing it up on there, even though they're live.
Yep.
They don't want to go up and ask you a question, but at least those questions can get asked.
Yep.
Again, I think that the engagement has been tremendous. I mean, there's been a lot of online, kind of on the forensic side of it that I have kind of walked away from it, going, I mean, I thought that was brilliant. It was good. I mean, there's really some unbelievable content for people to digest on it. But the cool part about it is they can go to everything.
Yep.
Remember, if you go to a conference, you're like, I don't know if I can split it. I want to see this guy, how he does this, and I want to see this one how he does this, and I can't decide how to do it. Now you get them all.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's a huge positive. I think that there's a lot of things, obviously, that can do. But I do feel sorry for, obviously, if you think about, the travel industry and the hotel industry, there's always those people that are going to suffer on that side of it, which that's what sucks about it.
Yep.
Because, I just think that more and more people are going to wind up going that way.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Yeah, having someone online because, you know what, I like people and I like to be with people, and so I think that is. Hopefully they do that. That's cool. You might have 100 people that are actually showing up live, but then you have 19,000 people that are virtual. That's cool.
Yep.
At least the content's getting out there.
Yeah, and even if we do go some kind of like hybrid route or some sort in the future, like maybe what potentially happens then is that actually opens up people who wouldn't normally be able to go to more of these conferences, and that I mean,
Exactly.
like we talk about travel and hotel and everything. Like, that's a fact. Not a fact, a factor into all of these
Exactly.
conferences. And online,
Exactly.
like as long as you've got the internet, like you're good.
Right. Dude, you're in your
Yep.
underwear. You don't even have to wear a shirt. I mean, you just hang out. I mean, you can just watch this whole thing. You're like, oh, dude, that's cool.
Yep.
And then you can just go and pretend like you go to your own bar. That's like
Yep.
the best thing ever. But yeah, exactly. So again, that's another point is that again, I think the cost has because a lot of people say, hey, man, I want to go to conference, but I only, my company's only allowing me to go to one a year, right? So because this is what's budgeted into that. So the last question I have though is talking about budgets. So, we talked about all big data. We talked about there's a lot of crazy stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff that's going to go on for years with on the zeros and ones and all this great stuff. Tell me, do you think that people are hiring more examiners?
I think right now we have more work in this field than I personally have ever seen on the commercial side. Like every company that I know of is just slammed with work because it's not it's not necessarily that the attackers are like more prevalent and doing more things. It's more of, oh, that that network thing that we set up to send us an alert, like we actually care about that now. So maybe,
Right, right,
and
right.
and then it turns into some other completely different thing. Like I
Yeah,
personally don't feel like there have been more incidents, there have been more attacks. I just feel like right now, like the security mindset is more cognizant to actually recognize and try to act on these
true.
things.
Yeah, that's very true. I think people are for I guess good for those end users that are now, hey, I'm a little more technical on it and I kind of understand it because this is what IT tells me.
Mhm.
But then again, it kind of bubbles to the top, right? That now you have those people that are cutting the checks for the for the equipment, for the VPNs, for the different types of items, for the different types of training that are going, this is why I'm doing it. Rather than before they're like going, you know what, we don't need to do that because we got to spend our money on the other side. So again, I get this, you can think of it as a silver lining. But my question is though, are those people that are cutting the check seeing that there's going to be more work that for the incident response for those or going out and now doing a collection, are they going to see that, or are they going to say, you know what, you did fantastic, Brian, thank you for doing everything that you did, but you did it great yourself?
Yeah, I think that one of the things, and this is just pure speculation. This is nothing more than speculation on my part. So, like, I guess we have to caveat that with,
I
I
do
am
that
not a
all the
professional,
time.
blah 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 blah
Exactly.
blah.
I do that all the time. These are not my
Yeah.
opinions, but my opinions only, not my company's.
I think that we're gonna see medium-sized to larger companies actually invest in internal IR compared to going all the time out for external IR, because they're going to realize like, oh, it's actually really really expensive for me to do that, and it's a lot cheaper for me to hire a team of like 3 people and actually have them and do whatever it is they need to do, rather than call up a company and be like, oh, by the way, here's our hourly bill rate, and
Yeah, exactly.
you're
You're like,
automatically locked into that, like
what?
what?
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that it will be that because they're like, hey, to the DK and the P and those types, right? Wait,
Yeah.
what? I mean, it becomes extremely expensive. So again, I think that they will wind up getting that. But oh my gosh, my beer is done, and I mean, I appreciate it. It was fantastic,
For
fantastic
having
for the
me.
time. I know. Cheers on that, and until next time, I will make sure that I will have you on again.
Sounds good.
So it was good, good, awesome. Thank you. Cool. I'm telling you what, fantastic, wide ranging, all the way from, talking about how awesome people in the community are, to, spending money for those digital examiners, because I think that that's going to be important in the near future, hopefully, hiring new people, starting to do some internal stuff. So again, I appreciate and thank you very much to the community. Obviously, you guys listening to this and watching it. Remember, you can just listen to it so you don't have to stare at my face. You can just listen to it on any type of your podcast stuff. So I appreciate the time, guys, and thank you guys all for it. We will have it again next week with another great guest. Thanks for coming.